In a time when the West was wild, it wasn't just the landscapes that took your breath away. Let's talk about some of the stunning beauties of the Old West. From fearless gunslingers to elegant ladies of the evening, each of them had a unique story to tell. Grab your hats, folks, and saddle up, because this is a ride you won't want to miss. Number 20. Josie Washburn. Back in the day, jobs were pretty scarce, so she decided to try her luck at a local saloon. While working there, she met this guy who she thought was the one she'd spent her whole life with. So, she said goodbye to her job and jumped into married life. But for some mysterious reason, he left her high and dry, which was pretty heartbreaking. But you know what they say? Tough times can be the best motivators. She decided to go back to prostitution to make ends meet. Then she rolled up her sleeves and got back to work. This time, she went all out and started her own brothel, and that place was open for business from 1895 to 1907. Now, we might never know her real name, but she went by Josie Washburn when she published her memoirs. She even had her own publishing company, the Washburn Publishing Company. Quite the entrepreneur, if you ask me. Number 19. Jennie Rogers. Back in her prime, folks called her the Queen of the Colorado Underworld. Yep, she wasn't just a pretty face. She had influence, money, properties, and quite the solid reputation to boot. Now, not everyone in that line of work had it that good. Most of the ladies in the brothels stayed put, working their tails off in fancy places run by respected madams. You see, it took more than just elbow grease to reach that level of success. But you know what? These women raked in more cash in a single day than most folks did in weeks. That's why in this photo from a booming Colorado town, you'll spot these stunners hanging out all over this famous brothel. And speaking of success, get this. Experts think these brothel beauties played a big part in developing the frontier. Sure, they offered extra services, but they also played the role of a wife, making sure their patrons ate well and stayed presentable. No wonder those prospectors kept coming back for more. Number 18. Pearl DeVere. She was pretty famous for taking good care of her ladies at the brothel. She made sure they got regular checkups, wore fancy clothes, and earned good money. This made her brothel even more popular among rich customers. And guess what? Some folks were ready to shell out $250, which is like $6,500 today, just to spend a night with her because she was so beautiful. That's why some of these ladies became the richest and most important people in town. They called her Mrs. Martin in Denver, but her real name was Pearl DeVere. She made quite a bit of money providing her services to wealthy folks in Denver. But when things slowed down in the city, she smartly moved to the gold rush town of Cripple Creek. Number 17. Emma Quigley. Just imagine Emma Quigley, the renowned opera sensation, taking an unexpected turn in her life's journey, leaving behind the stage and stepping into the intriguing world of a brothel. Little did she know, this unconventional choice would open a door to a world of lavish spending by countless gentlemen who were ready to indulge her with their fortunes. To solidify her status as the undisputed superstar of the red light district, Emma began adorning herself with extravagant jewelry and luxurious dresses, each carrying a jaw-dropping price tag of around $5,000. Number 16. Barbara Bordello. In this photo promoting her, Bordello didn't look like her usual self anymore. She transformed into a well-known Old West madam, oozing charm and timeless beauty. This change did wonders for her business, making it grow like crazy. She became super successful, and rumor had it she even had a fancy house with fancy stuff like velvet carpets, tapestries, and oriental decorations. Yep, she was the queen of the Old West brothels. Number 15. Julia Bulette. Julia Bulette, like every madam, was a real beauty. She started working at a new saloon in a mining town, and though it was tough at first, her unique charm made her popular with the miners. Eventually, she even ended up owning her own saloon as a madam. People called her Jewel or Julia. She was a stunning, tall, slim brunette with dark eyes, and she had a refined style and a great sense of humor. Jules Bulette ran her business from a small rented cottage near D and Union Streets in Virginia City's entertainment area. She wasn't in the fancy brothel business. She had to compete with streetwalkers and hurdy-gurdy girls for not-so-great earnings. But she left her mark, and the Virginia and Truckee Railroad honored her by naming one of their posh club coaches after her. You could find her portrait in many Virginia city saloons. Number 14. Josephine AIREY. She started out as a saloon gal, busting out some killer dances for the local crowd. But you know what? She had a knack for business, and she wasn't messing around. With pure grit and dedication, she turned herself into the ultimate boss lady, running a bunch of saloons and brothels, all with her name on them. And that's how she got the nickname Chicago Joe. 'Cause most of her girls hailed from the Windy City, just like her. When she was riding high on the success wave, Chicago Joe had her hands in the Red Light Saloon, the Grand Bordello, the Coliseum Variety Theater, and a bunch of other joints in town. She was basically the queen of the red light district. And let me tell you, these weren't no shabby shacks. Her places were like Party Central, and they could throw down some serious bashes. Building that bad boy in the 1880s set her back a cool $30,000. But you know what they say, the higher you climb, the harder you fall. The Panic of 1893 wiped out all her holdings, except for the Red Light Saloon. She spent her final years holed up in a room above it. Number 13. Diamond Lil Davenport. Diamond Lil Davenport was famous not just for her dazzling $1,000,000 smile, yep, real diamonds in her teeth, but also for her big heart. She did a lot of good stuff, helping out the poor and minors. Maybe that's why she hit the jackpot in life and snagged herself a wealthy businessman for a husband. She was a real go-getter, too. At just 19, she started running her own brothel in Denver, and folks said she was a total pro at it. It didn't take long before she became the queen bee of Denver's red light district. Picture this. Diamond Lil was almost 6 feet tall, drop-dead gorgeous, and always decked out in fancy diamonds, including one in her pearly whites. She lived a long life, passing away at 93 in a nursing home on June 18, 1975. And here's the kicker, no known relatives in the picture. Number 12. Big Nose, Kate. Big Nose Kate had quite the journey. She started out working at a dance hall in Mexico, always on the lookout for ways to make a buck. But everything took a twist when she crossed paths with Doc Holliday. They say it was love at first sight, and soon enough they moved in together. As time rolled on, Kate, who used to work for a madam, became a big-shot madam herself. In 1880, she even ran a fancy hotel. But life hadn't always been rosy for her. When she was just 14, her mom passed away, and 2 months later, her dad followed suit. That left Kate and her siblings in foster homes. It's kind of wild, considering she was born into a fancy family, but Kate ended up as one of the many soiled doves of the Wild West. Number 11. Eleanore Dumont. Even though her looks might have been a bit unusual, folks found it charming. She became a regular sight at mining sites, promoting her very own spot called Dumont's Place. And let me tell you, she had a heart of gold. She'd often hand out free grub to miners and even lend them cash when they were in a pinch. But as time rolled on, she lost her youthful charm and new competition showed up. To make matters worse, the guy she married turned out to be a total scam artist who took off with all her riches. One sad day, she was spotted totally wasted. After a losing card game, they found her lifeless with a letter nearby saying she was just plain tired of it all. Number 10. Etta Place. Etta Place is best remembered as Butch Cassidy's girlfriend, and later as Harry Longabaugh's, the Sundance Kid wife, but her life is shrouded in mystery. Historians know she was close to the Wild Bunch gang and helped out with their heists, eventually escaping with Cassidy and Longabaugh to Argentina. But who she really was and what happened after Longabaugh's death remains a big question. Some even suggest that she might be the same person as Ann Bassett, one of the famous cattle-rustling Bassett sisters, mainly because they looked alike and had connections to the Wild Bunch gang. Number 9. Josephine EARP. Josephine EARP, the stunning wife of the famous lawman Wyatt Earp, had a bit of mystery surrounding her. See, apart from being linked to her husband's archenemy, Sheriff Behan. There were some not-so-great rumors about her past. Her life was just as colorful as Wyatt's, but she fought hard to tell her own tale. Born in San Francisco, she bolted from home at 17 to join a traveling acting crew. She had a thing with Johnny Behan and followed him to Tombstone, Arizona in 1880. Then she left him for Wyatt Earp, and they tied the knot. Together, Josephine and Wyatt journeyed through boomtowns across the West, and even up to Alaska. They even tried to promote a movie about Wyatt Earp's life, but it got tangled up with a journalist named Stuart Lake, who portrayed her in a not-so-great light. In the end, Josephine decided to tell her own story, which came out in a book called I Married Wyatt Earp in 1967. Number 8. Nellie Bly. Nellie Bly was a top-notch journalist back in the day. She did some crazy stuff like purposely getting herself into a New York asylum to reveal how badly the patients were treated. But that's not all. She's famous for racing around the world in just 72 days, inspired by Jules Verne's character Phileas Fogg. And she went undercover to spill the beans on a mental institution from the inside. Basically, she was a trailblazer in her field and kicked off a whole new style of investigative journalism. In 1998, they even put her in the National Women's Hall of Fame. Number 7. Pauline Cushman. Back in April 1863, Pauline Cushman was doing her thing, acting in a play called The Seven Sisters in Louisville, Kentucky. Then, 2 Confederate officers came up to her and asked her to give a toast to the Confederacy during the show. They even waved $300 in front of her. Not sure what to do, Pauline talked to Colonel Orlando Hurley Moore, who was the big-shot U.S. Provost Marshal in Louisville, for advice. Colonel Moore had a wild idea. He told her to go along with the Confederate officers, do the toast, and then come back to him the next day. So, even though she was a bit confused, Pauline agreed, did the toast, and got the boot from the theater. But here's the twist. When she went back to Moore, he offered her a job as a spy for the Union. Turns out, Pauline was one heck of a spy during the Civil War. She was both sharp and easy on the eyes, and her spy skills were off the charts. She saved a bunch of Union soldiers by sneaking them vital info. But here's the kicker. She almost got hanged herself in the process. Number 6. Rose Dunn. Rose Dunn, the well-known outlaw, picked up her roping, riding, and shooting skills from her 2 older brothers. Those guys unintentionally pulled her into a life of crime. Over time, her brothers shifted gears and became bounty hunters. As for Rose, she stuck with the Newcomb's Wild Bunch gang, running errands for them and being their loyal sidekick. Number 5. Ann Bassett. Ann Bassett wasn't your typical ranch owner. She owned one of the biggest ranches around and had some beef, pun intended, with big-shot cattle barons who wanted her land. She was a big-deal rancher in Browns Hole, Colorado. Her sister Josie was in on the action too, and they both hung out with outlaws, especially Butch Cassidy and his Wild Bunch crew. Butch Cassidy and his gang were like regulars at their ranch, and they kind of had a thing for Ann and Josie. They thought the sisters were not just good-looking, but also smart and well-spoken. By the time Ann was 15, she was even romantically involved with Butch Cassidy. Her sister Josie was into Elza Lay, and the sisters even dated outlaws Ben Kilpatrick and Will News Carver, who later joined the Wild Bunch gang. In 1928, Ann tied the knot with a guy named Frank Willis, and they settled down in a small town in southwestern Utah. She lived there until she passed away at the ripe old age of 78. Number 4. Squirrel Tooth Alice Elizabeth, or Libby Thompson, was a lady of the Wild West. She worked as a prostitute and danced her way through Dodge City, Kansas, and other cowboy towns in the 1870s. Later, folks knew her as Squirrel Tooth Alice, and here she is in a picture with her pet squirrel, showing off for her fans. Growing up was tough for Libby. During the Civil War, her family lost pretty much everything. Then, things took a scary turn when Comanche Indians snatched her from her family's farm in 1864. She stayed with them for 3 long years until her parents coughed up a ransom to get her back in 1867. Libby had quite the family herself. She had 9 kids, and rumor had it that 3 of them might have had a different dad than her husband. Most of her sons ended up in a life of crime, and her daughters followed her into the same line of work. She lived a really long life and finally passed away at the ripe old age of 98 on April 13, 1953, in a place called Sunbeam Rest Home in Los Angeles, California. Number 3. Susan Anderson. Anderson, also known as Doc Susie, was all about her medical job. She was born in 1870 in Indiana and became a doctor after going to medical school. Her claim to fame? Well, she saved a miner's arm when another doc said it had to go. That got people talking. Doc Susie did medicine for a whopping 47 years, not calling it quits until she was 84. She took care of all sorts of patients, from pregnant ladies to folks with skiing mishaps. She even faced down pneumonia during the big flu outbreak in 1918. What's kind of cool is that she made house calls to her patients. But here's the kicker. She didn't own a horse or a car. Instead, folks paid her in food or firewood instead of money. In the 50s, newspapers and magazines couldn't get enough of her, and even actress Ethel Barrymore wanted to make a movie about her life. But Doc Susie turned that down. Number 2. Annie Oakley. Annie Oakley's early life was tough. She came from a poor family and had to endure some really harsh stuff like being mistreated, overworked, and even going hungry. But you won't believe how she turned it all around and became a big-time celebrity as the Rifle Queen. Here's a sad twist, though. Some experts think she might have been sexually abused when she was young. It's a real tough story. But Annie, well, she used her sharp mind and incredible shooting skills to overcome her rough past. She even taught thousands of women how to shoot for free during her lifetime. From her simple beginnings as Phoebe Ann Moses to her days in the spotlight as Annie Oakley, the sharpshooting champion and star of Buffalo Bill's Wild West show. This woman is a true legend. She's a Western hero, an American icon, and she's left her mark in history. Annie Oakley proved she could outshoot most men and kept her grace and dignity all the way. Thanks to movies, TV, books, and museums, her legend lives on strong in the 21st century. Number 1. Baby Doe Tabor. Elizabeth McCourt Tabor, aka Baby Doe, was once called the prettiest lady in the Wild West. She had quite the life story, going from rags to riches. But there was a sad twist that took her right back to rags. Baby Doe wasn't your typical Victorian lady. Nope, she broke all the rules of her time and didn't care about society's expectations, especially when she was married to a big-shot industrial tycoon. Her life was like a roller coaster, riding the ups and downs of fortune that lots of folks in Colorado and the Wild West experienced during the late 1800s and early 1900s. All the drama in her life has made Baby Doe Tabor a legend in Colorado and American history. She's remembered as a fearless and independent Western woman who did things her own way. And there you have it, our list of the 20 most stunning beauties of the Old West. There are more beauties we haven't mentioned, but that's for the next videos, so stay tuned. All right, that's it for today. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.